Tenants to L3OUT Part 1. Okay, everyone, so we just finished configuring our BGP L3OUT and our OSPF L3OUT. We have two sites. Site 1, it's currently the L3OUT with a BGP running as the peer or neighbor adjacency or the routing protocol between Site 1 and the ACI fabric. Site 2, we're using OSPF to do basically the same. Now, we need to provide access to both sites to our server environment, which resides inside ACI in the tenant called Web SRV Farm. So we configured that on our previous video. We created those endpoint groups, created the bridge domain, added the contracts, and they're talking between endpoint groups. So endpoint groups are currently talking, right? Because we created a contract and we allow that traffic through. Now, we need Site 1 to be able to communicate to my app SRV EPG. And Site 2 needs to communicate to the database EPG. And here's the scenario, and this is why it's going to be slightly different from a very simple, straightforward contract. Let me go ahead and draw real quick. The reason why is that we have the external sites tenant. Okay, so we got the external sites tenant, and we got those two sites as the external router domain. So we got Site 1 configured, and we also have Site 2. Okay, now this is a separate tenant, and then we have our Web SRV Farm as another tenant. Okay, so we got both environments isolated with different tenants, right? So inside the Web SRV Farm, we got the app underscore SRVS EPG, and we got the database SRVS EPG. We mentioned that we want to allow Site 2 to communicate to the database servers, and this will be bidirectional, which means the database servers can also talk to Site 2. Site 1 needs to communicate to the app SRVS EPG. Okay, if you have options into configuring this type of scenario, you can do everything on the same tenant, meaning that instead of me creating a completely different tenant for all my external sites, I could have gone inside this tenant on the external networks, and I could configure those two sites, Site 1 and Site 2, inside there. So once I did that, based on what we discussed on our previous video with BGP and OSPF, I just need to have those two site networks as external networks here, draw two, inside the same tenant, and I just need to attach a contract between those two, right? So we got a contract here for Site 1 going to the app SRVs, and then we also attach another contract between the database and Site 2. So we could have done it very simple if both the networks were actually configured on the same tenant. In this case, I wanted to turn off the scenario into a more complex one, so then you not only know the basics, but you also know how to communicate and do route leaking between different tenants. And this is basically what's happening on the back end. There's route leaks between two VRFs. So in the external sites, we have, and you remember, we configure a VRF called Site 1, and we configure another VRF called Site 2. There is one VRF here, right? And I believe it's going to be the Web SRV VRF. So what I need to do, basically, this is a logical way of seeing what will happen once we configure this environment, is that I am going to export what I have from the app SRVS from a subnet standpoint to Site 1, and then Site 1 is going to import the subnets that I specified on the external networks. Same way with Site 2. Site 2, I am going to export from Site 2 to the Web SRV VRF, and from Web SRV VRF, we're going to import into Site 2, okay? So this is how logically it looks like. Let me start by configuring the environment, but I want you to please do me a favor and please follow along. There's quite a few steps to do it. However, if you understand, again, like ACI, if you understand the order of operation, you should not have any issues, okay? So let's get started. Let me jump onto the APIC and let's get this show started, right? So we are here inside our APIC. Let me go ahead real quick onto the tenant And let's work with external sites, okay? So in external sites, we configure site 1 and site 2, L3OUTs, and under the external routed networks. Let's start by working on site 1 because we want to allow the app EPG from my web SRV farm tenant to communicate to my tenant external sites. So the first thing we have to do is that we have to configure a contract. And this contract, let me expand a little bit here. The contract needs to be attached onto Site 1 networks. So under networks, Site 1, we have a tab for contracts. And in here, because we are doing tenant-to-tenant communication, because we're communicating between different tenants, we have to allow the contract as the interface. So we have to enable the contract inside external sites. We have to apply it as a contract interface. So number one, we need to configure the contract in the source tenant of where we want to communicate to, right? So in this case, it's going to be on the web SRV farm. So let's go ahead into web SRV farm. And let me go ahead real quick and do a contract to be exported to external sites. So let's go ahead, create a contract, and we can call this site 1 contract, okay? And scope is going to be global because we're going to use this object between different tenants, so it should be set as global. Subjects, we can just allow all. I'm just going to do allow all for this demonstration, but then you can obviously tweak or limit the services or the ports to what you need between those two tenants, because site 1, maybe it doesn't need to hit remote desktop protocol 3389. It just needs to reach certain ports. So you want to make sure that you filter here in the contract. But in this case, we're just going to allow all for this demonstration. I have a filter configured in my common tenant called allow all, which basically is what it does. It allows everything. So we're going to call this allow all to the subject, and then it's called site 1 contract, and we'll press submit. Okay, now we need to export the contract to external sites. So let's go ahead and do that. Export to site 1. Okay, and then we're going to select the contract, site 1, and then external sites. So we're exporting this contract, which we just recently did, to tenant external sites. We'll press submit. Okay, so we have that done. Now we need to allow the external site tenant to know about the subnet that I have in my app SRV EPG, right? So we have the app SRV, which in this case, if we go on the bridge domain, so let's go onto app SRV, bridge domain, we go on the subnets. You can see here that we have this subnet at the 10.151/24. The 0/24, the gateway is .254. Okay. In order for us to advertise this outside of the ACI fabric, we have to go under subnets, not in the bridge domain, but inside the EPG. Click subnets, and you see this subnet here. We have to add another option. We'll double click, advertise externally, meaning that I'm going to allow this to be advertised outside of ACI, external from ACI, okay? So we'll press select here, and we'll press submit, okay? Done. Next, we want to apply the contract that we just exported to the external site. So we have to apply it here first on my app SRV EPG as the provider, right? Because we want to provide that access to site 1. So right click, add a provider contract, and there it goes. Site 1 contract, submit. We're done, okay? Now, let's go to external sites. Now let me expand on networking, routed network, site 1, networks, and finally click site 1, okay? Now, we need to apply the contract, remember, as the contract interface, and the reason why, like I mentioned previously, it's because we are importing a contract from another tenant and it needs to be applied as an interface, so then I have that communication between the two tenants, okay? And let me go ahead and find it, and here it goes. Export to site 1, and boom. Now we have that contract between the web SRV farm app SRVS EPG to the external sites site 1, okay? Now, here's the fun part. Now we need to find out if we see the route from the web SRV farm, in this case, the EPG app SRVS, so it's the 10.150.1.254 in site 1, okay? So let me go ahead real quick and let me open the console for that core switch in site 1. Okay, and we're connected here into, we just console onto site 1 core. This is the core that is located in site 1. So show IP route. There you see. What do you see right here? Because I just attached that contract interface, now I have a BGP route advertised in site 1 for the 10.150.10/24. That means that I've just learned that network via 10.3, which is leaf 2. If you go back into the BGP video, the L3OUT BGP, you're going to see O3 belonging to leaf 2, okay? So it just got injected a minute ago. So that means that, yes, we do see this route. But now we have to take a look at the WebSRV VRF and see if we see the route for this network, which will be the client network in site 1 that needs to communicate to the app SRVS. Okay, so this is the subnet inside the EPG, but now I have to advertise myself from site 1 to that EPG. So let me go ahead and bring a console onto the, okay, so I am logged in into the APIC. Now we're going to attach to one of the leaves. In this case, I can choose leaf 1. So let me change to batch mode, attach name, which is leaf 101, and then we'll type the password, and we are logged in into leaf 101. Now, I want to see what routes the EPG knows about, because we need to know that the tenant can get to my site 1, right? So show IP route, and then the VRF for that tenant, the tenant, it's web SRV farm web SRV VRF. Okay, so if we click app SRVS, we know that it's attached to bridge domain app SRVS BD. Now let me go real quick into VRF, and app SRVS is attached to web SRV-VRF. So let me see what was wrong on my side. Web SRV, let me take a look real quick. Maybe the tenant is incorrect. Oh, yes. So it's a dash instead of an underscore. Okay, let's fix that. Let me go ahead real quick. There you have it. Okay, so this is a route table in which the app SRVS EPG is currently looking for destination networks. And you can see we don't see the 10.200, which is the subnet for site 1. We need to make sure that the subnet is also advertised here, because if not, then the app SRVS cannot communicate, okay? So in order for us to do that, to advertise what I know in the site 1 location, I gotta go inside my external sites, then expand external router networks, site 1, networks, right? Site 1, and then I have to add those subnets under the subnet section. So let's go ahead and add that subnet, 10.200.10/24. That is my subnet in site 1. And very important, I am going to import this subnet into ACI, import route control subnet. That basically allows me to say what is allowed to be shared in the VRFs inside ACI from the external network itself. So in this case, I want to import this subnet in ACI. This is an external subnet for the external EPG, because basically this L3OUT is an external EPG. That's what it is. Also, very important, you have to allow share route control subnet. And the reason why is we are going to allow communication between different tenants and different VRFs, which means that I have to allow that route control subnet. So then this network gets advertised throughout the fabric, okay? So we'll click submit, and we have that there. So let's go back onto the APIC through console and run the command one more time. Yeah, look at that. 10.200.10/24 has been advertised via external sites site 1 VRF. So if you see here, I am doing the query out of the tenant web SRV farm VRF web SRV VRF. And then I can see that it's been learned over the tenant external sites site 1. And this is the route, the BGP AS number for my route reflector. If you don't remember what route reflectors are, go back into the BGP video to take a look at that. This is my BGP AS number from site 1. So that's looking very good, okay? Now, let's bring a machine One machine is going to be one of the app servers inside the WebSRB farm, and another one is going to be the PC sitting on site 1, and see if we can reach those two environments. Okay, so this is my app SRVA machine. So let me go ahead and show you what the IP is on this one. This is 10.150.110, and my default gateway is 254. So this definitely belongs to the EPG for app SRVS. So let me ping my default gateway, make sure that I'm able to reach it. And yes, I can reach it. Okay, moment of truth. Can I ping site 1's default gateway? No, I cannot. Okay, I cannot, but don't worry, we're gonna fix this, okay? Let me run it constant, and let me do the same thing for the PC1 in site 1. So we got PC1 here. Let me go ahead and bring it real quick. Ping 10.200.1.1, so we know that we can get there. Now let me try to ping 10.150.1.254, and I can ping the app SRV default gateway. And the reason why is, remember, I imported the route, so I know how to get to the app SRVS from the external L3OUT site 1. Now I have to export this subnet and the networks inside site 1, so that even though that I'm able to show a route on the table, if I don't allow the export, then the communication will not happen. So let me go ahead and do that real quick so you can see what I am talking about. Okay, so we got the 10.200.1.0.24 in the external network instance profile, right? And we're importing that network into ACI, okay? Now, what we can do here, that we can add that 10.150.1.0.24, and this will be exported to my site 1, okay? So let me go ahead and export that. We'll press submit. So we have that export route control subnet, and here's the catch. When we try to do L3OUT from different tenants, and we're using that contract interface, the traffic in the WebSRB farm side will still be inspected, but then because it's been enforced on the WebSRB VRF, if we don't have either the same VRF between the two locations, and let me explain to you. So you can do one thing. You can go ahead and, let me take a look at it real quick. Site 1 contract failed to form relationship. Let me take a look at that first. Okay, so it's because there is a previous contract. Let me go ahead real quick, and that should have taken care of the issue. There you go, it's gone. Okay, so I was mentioning that we have a bridge domain for web app 1, in this case for app SRVS. Inside this app SRVS, we have a VRF, right? Web SRV VRF. If we put both the site 1 and the app SRVS bridge domain on the same VRF, we will not need to do this import export, because we just need to do the export, because we need to advertise what I know from the ACI Fabric out to site 1. But in this case, if we have the same VRF, then we allow the traffic in and out without having some sort of policy control enforcement. So I'm going to explain to you what is that. So this allows me to apply conditions in which I am allowing the traffic in, meaning that I need a contract to allow the traffic from site 1 to the tenant web SRVS or app SRVS, okay? So in this case, if I just put enforce, even though that I still have a contract, because I still can limit the traffic because I just need to put a filter, then with unenforced, what it lets me is not allow that policy control enforcement from the outside onto this particular app SRVS EPG, okay? So let me go ahead and press submit. Now let's take a look and see how that looks now. Look at that. You see? So what I ended up doing was, number one, I exported the 10.200.1.1 network to site 1. So now site 1, and this is a machine, because remember, I am currently in the app SRV EPG. This is the network inside ACI in the tenant web SRV farm. And we're now pinging the core switch in site 1. So that's looking amazing. Now, I do have a machine on that location. Let me take a look at that real quick. And let me go full screen so you can all see it. So we got this machine here, and this machine has an IP of 1.10. So let me try and see if from the server I can ping this client computer, because that's the end goal. Let me go real quick onto the app SRVS. Okay, so we're here, and now let me try to ping 10. Haha, voila! You see that? Amazing. And let me run a constant because I want to show you one last thing before we end up the video. Okay, so when we do this, we have full access between two different tenants, and one of the tenants is even connecting to an external site or an external L3OUT. So we have quite a few hops, right? We still have full control of what comes in and out from there because we have a contract, and inside the contract, we have a subject. For this demonstration, I just allow all of it because I didn't want to have any complicated policies or anything. I just want to allow all of it, but I want to show you what will happen if I take out the filter so you know that we still allow that policy enforcement through, okay? Let me go ahead real quick and open my Apex, and this is running on the background, so let me go ahead real quick. And let me go onto the contract and site one contract policy, and we see here the subject. We can go ahead and send this to the trash. Let's take a look and see what happened now. There you go. So we lost connectivity because I just removed the filter that allows that communication between the two tenants. So I still can apply those policies on the contract and allow the traffic through, okay? So let me go ahead and put it back, obviously. And let me go ahead and add that. Let's call it allow all. And let me add back the filter, submit, and let's take a look and see how that looks now. And let's give it a second and it should start working. There you go. You see? Awesome. Let me make sure that from the site one PC, because this is the server trying to ping that site one PC, which is all working fine. Let me go back on the other side and do the same thing, okay? Let me ping the server from PC one now. So let me go ahead and bring the site one PC, it's right here. And let me try to ping the server. Ping 10, 1, 2, 10, 150, 110. And there you have it. That is the server in the app SRVS EPG. We're done with BGP. In our next video, we're basically going to do the same thing, but in OSPF. And the second video is more a refresher for you, okay? So you can understand the process. And please, if you can, watch this video multiple times and do your write-up. Please write the order of operations, because then once you know exactly what you need to do, it's just going to be a snap for you to configure in the future, okay? Okay, everyone, in our next video, we're going to take a look at Tenants to L3OUT Part 2. Thank you for watching.